Chapter 17. All this long time, the war would end. Uncle Henrik had said that, and it was true. The war ended almost 2 long years later. Anne-Marie was 12. Church bells rang all over Copenhagen early that May evening. The Danish flag was raised everywhere. People stood in the streets and wept as they sang the national anthem of Denmark. Anne-Marie stood on the balcony of the apartment with her parents and sister and watched up and down the street, and across the other side. She could see the flags and banners in almost every window. She knew that many of those apartments were empty. For nearly 2 years now, neighbors had tended to the plants and dusted the furniture and polished the candlesticks for the Jews who had fled. Her mother had done so for the Rosemans. It's what friends do, Mama had said. Now, neighbors had entered each unoccupied, waiting apartment, opened a window, and hung a symbol of freedom there. This evening, Mrs. Johansson's face was wet with tears. Kirsty, waving a small flag, sang. Her blue eyes were bright. Even Kirsty was growing up. No longer was she a light-hearted chatterbox of a child. Now she was taller, more serious, and very thin. She looked like the pictures of Lise at 7 in the old album. Peter Nielsen was dead. It was a painful fact to recall on this day when there was so much joy in Denmark. But Anne-Marie forced herself to think of the red-headed almost brother and how devastating the day was when they received the news that Peter had been captured and executed by the Germans in the public square at Rivingen in Copenhagen. He had written a letter to them from prison that night before he was shot. It had said simply that he had loved them, that he was not afraid, and that he is proud to have done what he could for his country and for the sake of all free people. He had asked in the letter to be buried beside Lise. But even that was not to be for Peter. The Nazis refused to return the bodies of the young men that they shot. They simply buried them there where they were killed and marked the graves only with numbers. Not even enough decency to put their names on the headstone. Later, Anne-Marie had gone to the place with her parents, and they laid flowers there on the bleak, numbered ground. That night, Anne-Marie's parents told her the truth about Lisa's death at the beginning of the war. She was part of the resistance, too, Papa had explained. Part of the group that fought for our country in whatever ways they could. We didn't know, Mama added. She didn't tell us. Peter told us after she died. Oh, Papa, Anne-Marie cried. Mama, they didn't shoot Lise, did they? The way that they did Peter in the public square with people watching? She wanted to know. We wanted to know it all, but wasn't certain that she could bear the knowledge. But Papa shook his head. She was with Peter and others in a cellar where they held secret meetings to make plans. So a cellar is like a place underground, kind of like a bunker, yeah. Somehow the Nazis found out, and they raided the place that evening. They all ran different ways trying to escape. Some of them were shot, Mama told her sadly. Peter was shot in the arm. Do you remember that arm? Peter's arm was bandaged in a sling at Lisa's funeral. He wore a coat over it so that no one would notice, and a hat to hide his red hair. The Nazis were looking for him. Anne-Marie didn't remember. She hadn't noticed. The whole day had been a blur of grief. But what about Lise? She asked. If she wasn't shot, what happened? From the military car, they saw her running and simply ran her down. So it was true what you said, that she was hit by a car? It was true, Papa told her. They were all so young, Mama said, shaking her head. She blinked, closed her eyes for a moment, and took a long, deep breath. So very, very young, with so much hope. Now, remembering Lise, Anne-Marie looked from the balcony down into the street. She saw that below, amid the music, singing, and the sound of church bells, people were dancing. It brought back another memory, the memory of Lise so long ago, wearing the yellow dress, dancing with Peter on the night that they announced their engagement. She turned and went to her bedroom, where the blue trunk still stood in the corner, as it had all these years. Opening it, Anne-Marie saw that the yellow dress had begun to fade. It was discolored at the edges where it had lain so long in folds. Carefully, she spread open the skirt of the dress and found the place where Ellen's necklace lay hidden in the pocket. The little Star of David still gleamed gold. "Papa," she said, returning to the balcony where her father was standing with the others, watching the rejoicing crowd. She opened her hand and showed him the necklace. "Can you fix this? I have kept it all this long time." It was Ellen's. Her father took it from her and examined the broken clasp. "Yes," he said, "I can fix it. When the Rosens come home, you can give it back to Ellen." "Until then," Anne-Marie told him, "I will wear it myself." And that's the end. So this part I kind of had read to y'all a little bit at the beginning, so you kind of understood what was fiction and what was true. So remember, Anne-Marie and her family are made up, but they were based on a friend of the author's who lived through these times. So it kind of goes on, a lot more detail. So I'll just kind of like put it here, and if you want to like go back and read it and pause it on the video, you can. Because it gives like really like even the details. I just like here. I just saw something about blood.
Yeah, it was a page after that.
Yeah, like rabbit's blood and like actual drugs and things like that. Yeah, that they really did. Yeah, and there's a little bit about her. Okay, let's write our last. Sorry, I don't have my notebook out. So now all the things have been wrapped up, except Ellen and her family aren't back yet, so we don't know, but they hope that they are. There they will be.
I want there to be a movie. And this would be such a good movie. I want there to be a second book. I want there to be a movie. They're just gonna leave.
I'm sure there's lots of shows, like you were saying. Okay, so we learned that
they're just gonna leave us on a cliffhanger forever.
War ends 2 years later. Peter was shot and killed. And then we learned about Lisa's death.
So first Anne-Marie was 10 and now she's 12.
Mm-hmm.
That happened in 2 years. They didn't talk about Kurt. Like this. Like what?